The 17th perek of Sefer Yehoshua is interesting because it talks about inheritance. Inheritance we discussed already a lot in the past. In a few places, Parshas Pinchas, Parshas Vayechi, a lot of very important details that were discussed. One of them was, why can't a woman inherit from the Torah? And are there any loopholes with that? We discussed that in the past. Over here, what we have, we're going to be talking about the distribution of land to the tribe of Manasseh and Ephraim. Now, included in those descendants was someone by the name of Tzelofchad. Tzelofchad was a father, and he died without having any sons. So the halacha is in that case, even from the Torah level, that the daughters are allowed to inherit. And this is what his five daughters did. They came before Yehoshua and Eliezer, and they reminded them of Moshe's promise that they were allowed to inherit the land. So we see from over here a very important lesson. If someone is has a right to something in a fair manner and they're not getting it, they have to speak up for that right. That's what we see from this. Sometimes people have legitimate claims and rights and they just don't speak up. Those people either need to speak up or someone needs to speak up on their behalf. That is a very important message that we could learn from this perek. Tangentially, this reminds us that in the 40 years when the Jews were in the desert, after the Exodus occurred from Egypt before they went into the land of Israel, all of the males between the ages of 20 and 60, they passed away. Why? Because they believe the negative reports of the spies. However, the women did not believe such reports, and therefore the women did not die, even between the ages of 20 and 60. Excuse me. Their love for Israel was so great that they didn't accept this lashon hara at all, and therefore they were rewarded by meriting going into Israel. That's what the Kli Yakar explains in Midbar Chav Zayin Aleph. So those are a few important lessons that we could learn from the from this perek over here, perek Yitzai. That being said, let's just go through the psukim. It's relatively straightforward, so there's therefore no reason to drag it out. We'll go through the psukim. There aren't so many insights. Try to run through it over here. First pasuk begins by saying, "Vayhi hagarda lamatel Menashe." There was a lot for the tribe of Menashe, like we just said. Kihu b'chor Yosef. Menashe is the firstborn, the oldest of Yosef. The Machir b'chor Menashe. Machir is the firstborn of Menashe. Avi Gilad, the father of Gilad. Kiuhai ish melchama is a man of war. Vehilo Gilad v'habashan, and he had Gilad and Bashan. These are places over here. Okay. Next pasuk says, "Vayhi." You also had a portion, the Bnei Menashe, the people of Menashe, and Noisim Mishpachosim, who remained for their families, Bnei Aviezer, children of Aviezer, Bnei Chelek, and the children of someone by the name of Chelek, Bnei Asriel, the children of Asriel, Bnei Shechem, and the children of Shechem, Bnei Chefer, Bnei Shemida, and the children of Chefer, and the children of Shemida. Ilu Bnei Menashe, Bnei Yosef, Hasachar, Mishpachosim. These are the children of Menashe, the son of Yosef, the males according to their family. And then the pasuk jumps right into Tzelofchad, which is what we discussed before. The Tzelofchad being Chefer, being Gilad, being Machir, being Menashe. All this is a setup to show that Tzelofchad is the son of Chefer, is the son of Gilad, is the son of Machir, is the son of Menashe. Well, Hayulu Banim Kiyim Banos. He didn't have sons; he only had daughters. Like me, a lot of daughters, no sons. See what happens in the future. The Elu Shemois Benoisev, and these are the names of his sons. Excuse me, his daughters. The five names are Machla, Noya, Vinoya, Chagla, Milka, Vitirta. Those are the five names of his of Tzelofchad's daughters. Okay. And they approached in front of Elazar, a Kohen, his five daughters, and in front of Yehoshua ben Nun. Mamlo discusses why the pasuk lists Elazar first. The Lifnei HaNesiim, and they came in front of the Nesiim, the leaders. Excuse me, Lamor saying, Hashem sivas Moshe l'sisol zenachnu b'soch achinu. Hashem commanded Moshe to give inheritance among our brothers, meaning the brother of our father, as the Mitzudas David explains. Vayitim lahem, LP, and he gave them pi Hashem nachla b'toch achi avian. He gave them, according to the word of Hashem, inheritance among the brother of their father. This is called the uncle in English. Okay. Next pasuk says, and it fell that there were portions to Menashe, 10 portions besides for the land of Gilead and Bashan that was on the other side of the Jordan. Because you had the daughters of Menashe that had a inheritance among the brothers, and the land of Gilead belonged to Menashe, who remained. Vayhi gevul Menashe Osher hamich metot asher al pnei Shechem, and the border of Menashe was from Asher to Michtamar, that was by Shechem, which faced Shechem. V'holach hagavul halayamin, and the border went to the south, El Yoshvi, to the inhabitants of Ein Tapuach. The Menashe Haisa is Tapuach. Menashe had the land of Tapuach. For Tapuach, Agvu Menashe, Lebnei Ephraim. But Tapuach was the border of Menashe, belonged to the children of Ephraim. The Yard HaGavul, the border descended, Nachal Kana, to the border descended until Nachal Kana, the brook of Kana. Negba, which was south of Lanachal of the brook. Odim ha'elu le'Ephraim v'soich ardi Menashe. These cities belong to Ephraim in the cities of Menashe. Gvul Menashe mesafon Lanachal b'tota'is of Hayama. And the border of Menashe was from the north of the brook, and its outlets were south to the sea. Negba le'Ephraim, the south belonged, the southern part was Ephraim's, the Safoin of Menashe, whereas the northern part belonged to Menashe. Vayhi Hayam Gavulim, and the sea was their western border. Uba Asher Yifkaun Mesafon, Ubi Yisachar and Mizrach. And Asher, they met with Asher on the north and Yisachar from the east. And you had the territory, Menashe's territory was with the territory of Yisachar, was within the territory, and Asher, and within the territory of Asher, and then you have Beishan Benoseha. You had a place called Beishan and its towns. Yivlayim Benoseha, and you had a place called Yivlayim and its towns. Ve'es Yoshvei Doyer Benoseha, and the inhabitants of Dor and its towns. Ve'yoshvei Ein Dor Benoseha, and you had the inhabitants of a place called Ein Dor and its towns. Ve'yoshvei Ta'anach Ubenoseha, and you had the inhabitants of a place called Tanach and its towns. Ve'yoshvei Megiddo Benoseha, and you had the inhabitants of a place called Megiddo and its towns. Shleishes Hanafas. You have these 3 provinces. these three areas over here. Below, Yachlu b'nei Menashe lahorish es ha'adam. The children of Menashe were unable to drive out the inhabitants of these cities. But Yola Hakrani l'sheves beres hazos, and the Canaanites wished to dwell in this land. This is what they wanted. Mitzuda Sion says inyan ratzon. This is what they wanted. Vayehi, and it was Ki chazku b'nei Yisrael, when the Jews were strong. Vayitnu es haknani lamas. The Jews were strong, and they wanted to impose a sort of tax on the Canaanites. V'hoirish lahirishu, but they couldn't drive them out. Vayidaber b'nei Yosef es Yehoshua leimor. Children of Yosef spoke to Yehoshua, saying, Madua nasata linacha goydel echad v'chivel echad v'ani amrav ad asher ad ko b'richani Hashem. Why have you given me, is what they told Yehoshua, why have you given me an inheritance of this lot and one portion, and I am a big nation, and this is what Hashem blessed me with. In other words, they were saying the land that they had wasn't big enough for all of them. They were too big. To that, Yeshua responds, Vayomer alehem Yeshua. Yeshua responded to them, Im amarav ata, if you're a big nation, alo lacha haya'ara, you should go up to haya'ara, a forest. Ube rasa lacha sham be'eretz aprizi v'refaim, and you should create an area over there in the land of the Prizi and the Refaim. Ki az lacha harafaim, because it's confined over there. The mountains too confined. In other words, develop the land, cut the trees down, develop it. That's what the Mitzudas explains. Rashi rather explains on perek Tezvav over here. You could cut down the trees in the forest. You could build cities over there, develop the land. You already had the land. He was saying, you're complaining that you need more space and you have too many people. That precisely is the reason that now you could have more space in the current space that exists. Now that you have more people and more manpower, you could clear out the entire area. From over here, we learn a powerful lesson, by the way. A lot of times we don't realize and take advantage and utilize the tools that we were already given, what we already have. People are always thinking what they don't have. If they would realize what they have and what they could use with what they have, people would go to much further places and much better places. Important lesson. By Yirmu b'nei Yosef, the children of Yosef said, Lo yemotze lanu hara. It's not enough. The mountain range isn't enough. It's insufficient. Furthermore, v'rechev barzel. You have a rechev barzel. Barzel is like a type of iron or train almost. Rechev barzel b'kol hakrani hayosheb beretz ha'imach la'asher b'beishan u'b'noiseh v'la'asher b'emek Yisrael. You have this type of chariots, where all the Canaanites have. They're inhabiting the land in the valley of Yisrael. Excuse me, in the valley of Beishan and its villages. Beishan and its villages in the valley of Israel, they're the chariots. In other words, they were saying they're going to wage war against us. But their chariots were in trouble. But Yomer Yehoshua, to that, Yeshua responded, Beis Yosef Ephraim, to the house of Yosef, Ephraim and Menashe Lamor, Ephraim and Menashe saying, Amravata v'koya godolach, you have a big nation and great strength. Lo yeh lecha goydel echad. You're only going to have one lot. In other words, you could use that strength now in wars, military, if needed. Ki har yelach, you're going to have a mountain. Ki ya'arhu ubriata. You have a forest, cut it down. And then you could have its outskirts. Ki toirish sakrani kirach barzo loy ki chazaku. Excuse me. Because you're going to drive them out, even though they have the iron chariots and are strong. In other words, from a military perspective, they were higher up. And therefore, since they were higher up, they would be able to fight off those chariots. They had that advantage over there. Soon as David goes into this more as well. Even though they have a lot of people and they have those chariots and they're very strong, people who sit on the top of a mountain have a tremendous advantage over people who are lower down. Remember, back then they didn't have guns. So therefore, use that advantage and you will be victorious. That's what Yehoshua told them.